flash fiction has been around for quite a while. I actually gathered some books. I taught fiction at Anne Arundel Community College and Chesapeake College, um, Vermont College too. And I used to use this book, 72 very short stories. Probably can't see that, but flash fiction edited by three people, James Thomas, Denise Thomas, and Tom Hazuka. So, I mean, even um, 20 years ago, I was aware of the form, the flash fiction, and mostly it's defined as under 1,000 words or less. Some people say, call it microfiction, 500 words or less, or even 100 words or less, nanofiction. Um, but more recently, the novella-in-flash has taken hold. It became very popular and still is popular in England and Ireland. There's Indian writers using it. And the novella-in-flash is just, it's not a collection of flash fiction pieces. It's a novella that is comprised of all flash fiction pieces so that there is a connecting thread. In that thread, that connecting thread can be setting, it can be characters, it can be, of course, both. It can be symbols, a repeated symbol or motif. And so when I was thinking about writing about my experiences growing up on my grandparents' dairy farm in northeastern PA, I kind of thought about, okay, so I have all these little stories in my mind of growing up. I used to spend all my summers on my grandparents' dairy farm and holidays. And so I kind of think about my memories as little stories, things that happened. And so I thought, I think this could be a really good form for me. So I just started writing down my memories, one little story at a time, and they were coming together as flash fiction pieces. And so then I had the connecting thread. I had the connecting thread of the setting, of course, and my cousins. Of course, I fictionalized it. It's, they're all false names, fictional names. But it seemed like I needed more of a thread than that. Um, and so I have a good friend, Dan Crawley. He has a novella-in-flash out called Straight Down the Road. And he won a commended award in the Bath Flash Fiction Contest for this book, and he got his flash novella-in-flash published. So I was talking to him, and he had read some of my flash pieces that I was putting together, and he said, "I think your thread is your grandmother." And so over 30 years ago, I had sat down with my grandmother at her kitchen table and recorded basically her life story on cassette tapes. And I had 7 of those cassette tapes. And my grandmother died over 10 years ago, and I haven't been able to listen to the tapes. So finally, I took a deep breath and I got them out and I started listening to them and taking notes. And I'm telling you, James, it was just a remarkable experience. It was like she was right there with me, telling me those stories. I mean, just her voice just brought her back so strongly, and her presence and spirit was just right there. And it's been there the whole time I wrote this novella-in-flash. So I started writing it last spring, and I basically finished it in last December. And then I got it published that following spring. So all of this happened really quick. So I took notes and I wrote down all of her stories. And so what I did was weave in her story of growing up on the dairy farm right next door to my grandparents' dairy farm. And she married the son of the other farm, and they joined those 2 farms. So she grew up on that same land. And so I wove her stories of growing up there with my stories of growing up there. And, there were some parallels in our lives, but there are also a lot of differences because of the different generations. And she had, of course, a lot less choices a lot less freedom with her life than I did. Um, and so that's brought out. Four of the stories were published in literary journals as I was writing it. Um, but to write it, it's a very poetic form. And I started out as a poet, and then I still am a singer-songwriter. My husband and I have a duo. We perform at different retirement communities now, Easton and Crofton, and we played at Heron Point. Well, I went to school um, at, well, UMBC. I, I started, and then I transferred to Northern Arizona University, and I got my English degree there, and then my master's in English. Um, and then I went to Vermont College and got my master's of fine arts in creative writing fiction. Um, and music has just always been a part of my life. I met my husband over 30 years ago, and we got together through music. He's a guitar player, and I'm a singer, flute player, a little bit of piano. And so we've been doing music, for 30 years. And so that's just always been a constant. And now we have a flower farm together. It's Galena Bloom's farm. We've had that for over 20 years. So we sell at Chestertown Farmers Market and Bell Farmers Market, do a lot of weddings. Um, I knew once we called it a farm, it was going to be more than that. So